Well, just weeks before South Africans head to polling stations, the Centre for Development and Enterprise is calling on political parties to provide their urban growth plans. The centre says policymakers aren't planning for the growing number of people moving to cities. It says more needs to be done to achieve inclusive growth. For more on this, I'm joined on Skype by Benson, who is the head of the Centre for Development and Enterprise. And good evening. Thanks very much for your time. Before we get to what you are putting on the table, tell us why you are in Washington and what you're doing there.
Well, I'm doing a lot of things. I've been giving talks at the National Endowment for Democracy, at the Corporate Council on Africa, and the Centre for Global Development on South Africa and where the country is and what people might expect from the election. There's quite a lot of interest. I was also with Ricardo Hausman in Boston, where he has his annual conference on economic development and new insights that I can bring back to South Africa. And I'm talking to lots of interesting people, catching up on the latest thinking and possible people to bring to South Africa to help us make the hard choices we have to make.
Well, apparently you were part of an audience that a couple of days ago had to sit and listen to the governor of the Reserve Bank, Lesetja Jangho. Tell us what your takeaways were there.
Well, it was a big honor. He gave the annual lecture at the Peterson Institute, which is one of the most highly respected macroeconomic institutes in the country. And they were honoring him, and he made an excellent speech. He talked about the importance of Reserve Bank independence and the role that they had to play during the Zuma era in defending that independence, and probity. So the Reserve Bank was one of the important institutions that stood up against the corruption and capture of the South African state. So a very important speech, a very big honor. It deserves a lot of publicity.
Well, it's interesting that the guest that came before you from Unomics was talking to us about South Africa's performance over a whole range of areas, social, economic and governance measures. In fact, those were the indicators that they used, and how in the past 12 years we've deteriorated more than any other nation that is not at war. But let's leave that for now and come to what you and I were supposed to talk about tonight, which is why you think that political parties should be asked to present their plans for towns and cities. Why would that be important?
Well, if you want accelerated and inclusive growth in South Africa, we're arguing that it has to be urban-driven. A number of other things, but urban-driven. And we're already a country that's close to 70% urbanized. This will get higher in the next 10 years. This is a very different place from 1994, when we were about 50% urbanized. This is a good thing in our view, and this provides the country with an opportunity to think hard about how we manage these cities and our urban system to leverage opportunities for more and more South Africans. So we are saying that the country's not doing very well at the moment, and we want cities of hope for the poor and for everybody. And we should be asking political parties before we vote for them, what are they going to do differently in our cities? What are they going to do to promote more and more firms and more economic development? How do they see working with business to do all of that? How do they see integrating the townships into our cities in a much more effective way?
But what do you say to people who say the influx to the cities really is caused by lack of development where many people would in fact prefer to be, which is in the small towns and the rural areas. So we are really dealing with symptoms here and not necessarily curing the actual sickness.
Look, Fuo, all over the world, countries, as they develop, they urbanize. And people vote with their feet to the places where there are more and more opportunities. We could certainly do more about rural development in this country. We've done terrible things to rural people in the past, but we've never really adopted a constructive, economically based, future-oriented rural strategy. But the truth is that there are more opportunities all over the world in cities, and that it's good for poorer people to come to the cities. What's absolutely vital is to make the most of this. South Africa has to manage that process a lot better than we're doing, so that people get more opportunities for jobs and for education and training in our cities. So urbanization is a good thing. It is correlated all over the world with much higher economic growth. So we're unashamedly in favor of urbanization, and this is happening apace in the country, and we need to think much more deeply about the implications of increased urbanization for the allocation of powers, resources, and national attention, without ignoring those people who live in rural areas.
And we're going to leave it there for this evening. Thanks very much for your time. And Benson, who is the head of the Center for Development and Enterprise.